And we are live. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and of course, I'm also its creator. So, my guest for today, wow, she has one very interesting start to her expat life, by the way. So, she is a 2 decade media veteran of Skynews in Australia who turned from a working woman to a Ford holder. This is actually a personal term I have for trailing spouse since I don't really like that term as I find it
No.
disrespectful.
Hmm.
And yeah, and within that same year that she actually become uh, an expat wife too, she actually become a mom. So please welcome Miss Nicole Webb. She will be discussing her autobiography today, China Blonde, which tells the interesting, amusing, and most definitely hair-raising tales as she survived and thrived in the land of chopsticks in Hong Kong and China, dim sum, and really tall buildings while navigating reinvention of her perspective, her her life as a married couple, humor, and finding your place in the completely new world of your own. So, hi Nicole, how are you? Welcome to the
Hi,
show.
Calvin. Hi. Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Good to see you.
Thank you, thank you. I was really interesting. I was really looking forward to this episode because I actually found your YouTube interviews quite a while back. So I was like, wow, the story is interesting. Okay, wow. Okay, would love to
Okay.
hear more of it. And I know you already wrote your book, but the thing is I think with a live interview, you will have to be able to tell the whole experience of on your own. So we'll definitely get to that. But before we begin, so Global Citizens is for all of you who is watching this for the first time is an online platform. It's a weekly live stream whereby I interviewed third culture kids to represent them and any individuals who experience the life of a global citizen, a transnational identity like what Nicole is as an expatriate, a digital nomad, etc. So the main purpose of this is advocacy, so that you guys actually understand that the life of this life is not it's not an extended holiday. It's a life whereby you have to reinvent yourself. You have to sometimes change how you talk, who you are, your perspective. Simply is because you just try to fit in a new country, but your older perspective may not fit in. So okay, so the first question is, well, I don't know. It's always a 50-50. Some people like it, some people don't like it. So
Okay.
Nicole, so how would you define home though? So aside from your loved one, is it geographically still in Sydney, Australia, or Hong Kong or China has superseded that to a certain extent?
Yeah, look, that's a really tough one, Calvin. I have thought about this quite a lot because where is home? I mean, I was born in New Zealand and moved to Australia as a teenager. So I still have a New Zealand passport. And when I hear the haka, the New Zealand Maori traditional dance, I always get that, pull of the heartstrings. I've lived in Australia most of my life and I feel Australian, probably more than anything. But yeah, Hong Kong definitely has a big piece of my heart. I mean, my daughter was born there, Ava. We lived there for 4 years, so not long, but gee, we fell in love with it and we could have easily stayed there forever. And China, we moved to the middle of China, and that has shaped so much of who we are and so many memories from China, crazy, good, bad, fun, tough. So, I think all of these places have a little piece of our hearts, so I can't give you one answer. Sorry.
It's perfectly understandable. Perfectly understandable. I get that. I get that. I kind of want to ask though. Yes, your daughter. Yes, she is 11. Bless
Mhm.
her. So, how good is her Mandarin? Actually, I really want to know about
Yeah,
this.
a lot of people ask me that, and oh, gee, I make her study it once a week and she hates me for it. But, it's hard for a 10, 11-year-old to see how, useful it would be to know Mandarin down the track. Obviously, in China, she went to an international school. So The teachers spoke English, but there were a lot of Chinese and Korean kids in her class that didn't speak English. And she had Chinese lessons, obviously. So, you would like to think she knows a bit. She tells me she knows nothing to this day, but I'm sure she knows more than she's letting on.
Oh, bless you. Ava, your mom, follow what your mom says. I'm
I
28
know.
years old now, and I never realized how important my Chinese is. And trust me,
Oh,
I don't like it when I was your age learning it. I really, really
yes.
don't like it. In fact, I
Okay.
prefer to use English a lot. In fact, I speak English better than my own mother tongue, which is Bahasa
Wow.
Indonesia.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to play this to her and tell her how important it is.
Yes. Listen to
Yes.
your mom, kids. Listen
Yes.
to your mother.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually did not know the New Zealand part of your identity because I believe New Zealand allows dual passport, right? Or is it only single passport? I can't remember about that. Sorry.
I think it's single passport at the moment.
Okay.
And I should probably have Australian citizenship. I'm a bit naughty and I haven't done it. I always said I would. And then I said when we came back from living overseas, I would definitely get my Australian citizenship. But you had to then start again and wait 4 years. So I will do it soon.
I will keep your words for it. I have a recording for it and it will be
Oh,
on my channels.
you do.
Okay. What have you experienced though with reverse culture shock? So, like when you head back from overseas, I think maybe you came back during the COVID period. It's out of safety for your family too, right? So, what was
No,
the experience? Oh, sorry
we
about that.
came back before COVID,
Oh,
which was probably quite lucky in a way because I'm not sure we would have been able to get back. We came back because James, my husband in hotels, got offered a job in Sydney. And we did that, to and froing. Are we going to? Do we want to leave China? Because by this point, we'd lived in China for 2.5 years and we were really loving it. And it had become normal as much as it can. And we had made some great friends and, we were loving the culture and really getting into it. But then this job in Sydney came back, and jobs are hard to come by in Sydney. So, and family was back here, and Ava was, getting older. So we made the decision to come back. Heavy hearted, I guess. We wanted to, we loved our life overseas, but also it was great to come back and be nearer to family, except, of course, COVID struck and made it more difficult. But yeah, there was a lot of reverse culture shock. I think it was just so quiet. When you're in Asia, more than anyone, it's just so busy all the time. There's just noise constantly, late into the evening. And I remember driving around our suburb, which is sort of close to the city, but it was so quiet at, 9 o'clock at night. And I thought, where are all the people just walking the streets? The shops closed super early here. And, the sky was so blue. That was one thing I remember about Australia. I'd always taken it for granted, I guess.
yep.
Yeah, so you didn't see blue sky so often. So coming back to Australia was almost like looking through high definition goggles. It was so piercing and so bright. And, the grass was so green. I remember Ava, saying, why are there so many flowers? And, just little things like that were just about the nature. And I could go into the shops and I could actually speak to, the retail assistants and ask them for what I needed. I could go to the doctors in the supermarket and the hairdressers, which I write a lot about in my book, obviously. So, there was a lot of good things and a lot of strange things. I couldn't really drive very well. I hadn't driven for 7 years. So it was a bit funny with my husband and I driving. Parking was a bit of an issue for a while.
Yeah, don't worry. You don't have to reverse culture shock on that. I know how that feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually never learned driving when I was growing up in Singapore. So when I learned to drive as an adult, like it was really, really frustrating. Like I we have two cars in my house, and I banged one of them at least on the curb. And I think at that time we just bought it for a week, so
Oh,
you can imagine the heartbreak on my parents' heart when
oh,
that happened because I was like, I really don't know how to do this. Why is the road so narrow? And earlier you mentioned on blue sky is like, yeah, like I think it was like the second week during our quarantine here. And when I was driving with my father, he was looking at the skies like, the 60 years I've been alive, this is the first time I see that we have a blue sky since the road is
Wow. Yeah.
always so, the sky is
Yeah.
always gray. That's what he
That
knows. To him, that the
yeah.
blue sky is a lie.
I know. And I guess that was one thing in COVID, right? Because factories weren't operating and cars weren't on the roads, there wasn't as much pollution as well. So, we saw probably a lot more blue sky than we've seen in a long time.
Ah, that was fun. Okay, well, we don't support COVID here, guys, so
No.
please don't cancel my channel.
Yeah, no, that's looking for the silver lining. There's not much to
Yes,
it.
we're just looking for the silver lining, though.
Exactly.
Okay. So a lot of people, I think you would have explained this in your book, but maybe you can share a little bit more about this though,
Yeah.
because people would assume Hong Kong and China is actually, well, they're both Chinese-speaking countries, so they thought, okay, they could be one, and that was of course a stereotype that in a sense, I've tried to explain a little bit more on this channel. One of my good friend, Mr. Ben Vogel, who actually grew up in Taiwan, actually was asked when he came back to the United States, is that has he ridden a water buffalo? Because they would assume that's how they travel, which is of course is not true. They have cars there.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share a little bit more what is actually a stark difference between Hong Kong and China, and also
Yeah.
maybe if you don't mind, how has living there actually, in a sense, changed your perspective on certain things?
Okay. Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, I guess Hong Kong, I don't want to get political, but obviously Hong Kong is part of China, and but I guess they are so different because Hong Kong for 150 years had the British influence. So Hong Kong is very much a mix of the East and the West. There's a real blend there. So it's also, the financial hub, one of the main financial hubs of the world. So I guess it's more international, more multicultural, more English is spoken, all those sorts of things. And then I guess when you cross that, they say it's like crossing the Great Divide when you go into the mainland. And it really is quite different, especially when you go up north. And Xi'an was where we were, which was in between Beijing and Shanghai, but sort of inland. And it is a city of 9 million people, probably more now because, cities grow like wildfire over there in China. And, it was just so different. The immediate difference for me was the signs, I guess, on the signs everywhere. In Hong Kong, they would have the Cantonese, the characters, and then they would have English underneath. Whereas in China, no English anywhere at all. So that was the first thing I really noticed. And of course, not much English spoken in Xi'an as well. And while it is a city of, over 9 million people, many of those people had never seen a Westerner in the flesh. So when they saw Ava and I coming outside, we lived in the hotel and we were opposite a giant pagoda, which everyone came from around China to visit. And sometimes we got more attention than the pagoda because, blonde hair. Ava had blonde hair, very fair skin, blue eyes. And they were just fascinated because they've only ever seen, people in the movies. And it was a harmless fascination, but it took me a while to understand that. I think I mentioned in the book, it was a bit daunting at first, when people would try and touch Ava and pick her up and put her on their shoulders. And it was, crowding around us, taking photos. And it was crazy. So it took a while to get used to that. And, in China, the food is different in every single province, which is like a state. It's very spicy and hot in Xi'an, lots of noodles. Very in Hong Kong, it's dumplings and dim sum and all that sort of thing. And the cultures are quite different. So, it was a massive learning curve. I thought that I knew China, having lived in Hong Kong, and I'd been to Shanghai and I'd been to Shenzhen over the border. But gee, I really was in for quite a shock. And there was a lot of culture shock in those first few months.
Oh my God. Oh, how young was your daughter at that time? She
Um,
was,
3.5.
goodness, that must be scary for her. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she doesn't remember so much now, but she does remember people coming up and, you know, trying, and everyone wanted to have a photo with her, or they wanted their child to have a photo with her. So they're pushing, little Johnny into the photo, quick, have a photo. And I remember the first thing was, that the babies wear those split crotch pants instead of nappies
Oh,
or diapers, because that's how they toilet train them in a lot of parts of China. It's quite traditional. So just things like that, that you don't understand. You don't know why, the toilets are all squat toilets. Just they're little things and, they're not major problems, but they take a little bit of time to get used to.
oh, bless her, bless her. Okay. Oh, wow. Huh. Must be scary. Must be an interesting experience. You could have charged money for that.
Yeah, I know. For every photo that was taken, if we had $1 for every photo, imagine.
Ah, yeah, you could have taken some money out of it. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Okay. So maybe I will hold off a little bit of the discussion with your experience abroad because I think this next topic will actually tie it back together again. So this was the so for myself, I personally have never denied I'm a mommy's boy. So I would love to hear the story of a TCK mom, which is basically you, because well, your daughter grew up overseas and she will have she will have a little bit of an identity crisis later. I will put it at around between 12 to 16. So when that happened, give me a call. Let
I
me see if I
will.
can
I
help her.
will. Yeah, I do wonder that, because it is interesting. She's born in Hong Kong, and of course she looks nothing like a Hong Kong person. So um, I wonder how she'll feel about that when she gets older and how that will shape her. I'm really interested to see how those years, she doesn't remember much of Hong Kong, but she does certainly remember Xi'an and China. So I'm interested to see how that shapes her when she gets older, what she thinks, whether she wants to go back there. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, usually it depends on how close you are with on how your fondness for certain places. Like for me, I grew up most of my life in Singapore. I mean, I love the Lion City, and I do really miss going back there, especially now, since I've
Yeah,
been away for every for since I think one of the symptoms is that every few months or even sometimes could be weeks to some people, you need to be away. You need to be either back to that homing land or maybe somewhere just to travel. It's because you are so used to that. So
yeah,
that will be an interesting
I
experience for
know.
you.
And that was true when we were in Xi'an as well. I used to travel back to Hong Kong very regularly, every couple of months just to sort of get out and, get back to something that I knew and something that was familiar to me. And I definitely think we'll go back to Hong Kong as soon as we can.
Uh, Let me know if you're ever in Indonesia or Singapore. I would
Yeah,
definitely would love to
Singapore
hear more.
too. Yes, I love
Yay.
Singapore as well. Yeah.
All right. I actually want to ask a little bit more on your career path because 2 decades in the media industry is already impressive in its own rights. And you transition from it to be a mom, and then all of a sudden you become an author now. And I know you're a speaker and along with any other things. So what was it like though? And throughout the transition, what do you learn a little bit more about yourself about it?
Gee, I learned a lot about myself because, I was a newsreader for a decade, a journalist. I've been a journalist for, 30 years. And we decided to move to Hong Kong. James got offered a job, but it was me that said, let's do it. I'd been at Sky for 10 years and I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve, which was to become a newsreader. And I loved it, but I was also sort of losing a bit of that ambition. And I thought I could be here in another 10 years doing exactly the same thing. So something just came over me and probably a bit of advice from my mum. And I just thought, let's do it. Let's go to Hong Kong and really live life. So we did that. And of course, we had just got married and we were trying to have a baby. And so we found out we were pregnant in the same week that James got the job. So it was like, oh my God, this is like a double whammy. Suddenly I'm leaving my career. I'm becoming a mum in a foreign country. No family or friends. We didn't have a house to live. I didn't have a car. So it was quite a big adjustment, especially in those early days when I was pregnant. And James was obviously very busy with his new job. He had a lot to prove, long hours to work in Hong Kong. And I'm twiddling my thumbs trying to figure out this new city and meet new people and not feeling myself being pregnant anyway. I did have quite a case of lost identity, I think. For quite a while, I thought, I don't really know who I am anymore, because I realized how much that title of newsreader had been sort of tied to who I perceived myself to be. And then I had Ava, and I was sort of caught up in that moment of bringing up a baby, and didn't have much time for anything else. But I always knew that I wanted to still do something else. I had to have a bit more of a purpose in my life. And I kind of went through a stage where I didn't really know what else I could do. And I thought, I didn't want to go back into newsreading because I felt like I wanted to be a bit more flexible, having a baby. And I think I lost a bit of confidence as well. So I remember a friend said to me, you've got 20 years of experience in all sorts of things, from journalism to writing to producing to speaking. So I started dabbling in a bit of, writing a bit more for parenting websites and lifestyle. And then I started my blog, which was sort of entertainment, an expat entertainment blog. And I loved that, and did a bit of MC work, and slowly dipped my toes in the water, I guess, as much as you can with a newborn. And sort of started to piece back together who I was when I wasn't just a newsreader. And of course, when we went to China, I couldn't really work much at all because you needed a visa. So I continued writing, and I was writing for a few magazines by that point. And I then decided that I wanted to write a book. Well, I'd always thought I would write a book. I just didn't know what that would be about. And when we moved to China, I knew straight away, because it was just so fascinating and crazy and different, that there would be a story in that. So that's when I started the big, long journey of researching how on earth do you write a book?
How on earth do you write a book, actually? Just to share with you a little bit of funny story. I actually wanted to do that when I came back from Singapore at that time. So what I did was that I used to write articles that I thought would be like chapters of the book, and I posted on my LinkedIn with different level of reaction to it. But the thing is that when I actually reached a stump, I was away for overseas at that time, and when I come back, I realized, oh no, all of this thing does not connect. It doesn't make
Oh,
sense.
oh,
So yeah, that was at least 3 months of my work, and
oh no,
I think I came up with 12 chapters or something. So I'm like, oh no, it
that's
doesn't make
good.
sense.
Ah, some of them
So
must. I'm sure you could pull something out of that.
yeah. Well, I did, and actually after that, I realized one of the thing is that when I actually showed it to my friend, who is an expat, who has been a long time expatriate, he actually told me your experience doesn't cover a lot of global experience. It's just cover your experience moving from a developed country to a developing
Yeah,
country.
yeah.
So so yeah, then that is actually one thing led to another, and this is how this show came about. It's
Right.
because it's actually just a platform for you to just, I mean, this is practically something you can do in a Zoom call, but it's just that, well, it's being interviewed, it's just done live, so people can
Yeah,
actually see your story, what you are
yeah.
experiencing. So yeah,
Brilliant.
that's fun.
Great
Thank
idea.
you.
Great idea.
Thank you. If any Australian network want to hire me, please let me know.
Yes,
Thank you.
Calvin's your man.
Thank you. I just don't have the visa there though. So sorry.
Oh, can
Oh
work on
my.
that.
Thank you. Okay. What have you ever experienced something? Well, people will call it a failure, but I like to call it a learning experience, though, because of misunderstanding from a culture, from cultural misunderstanding. Sorry, is because well, there are, like you mentioned earlier, even the way people live in Asia and in Australia is completely different. Like here,
Mm,
it seems that it's always have to be on the go, and of course the way we approach people is different. I actually invited Alberto Antonucci before, who is a actually renowned business consultant in China from Italy, and he actually explained one of the issue that he had before was uh, he being an Italian, he is a lot more spirited, so he's much straightforward, and in China you can't do that, right? Since yeah, so maybe you
yeah.
can share with us about that.
Yeah, I think just learning about the culture and how they deal with one another is quite different. They are quite a reserved culture in many ways, and they don't really hug you hello, like I remember Hong Kong, it was kisses on both cheeks when you greeted each other, like in Paris. And then you get to China and it's, very reserved. You just sort of a smile and a nod. Um, there's not as much touching and affection. And just, I guess, so many different traditions, and China is really steeped in so much history that stems back thousands and thousands of years, and that really shapes a lot of who they are today. I think it still shapes who they are and how they think and what they do. And I think a lot of people forget that China is still very much a developing country, as much as they're the second biggest economy in the world. And we always hear about their political parties and the way they govern. There's 1.4 billion people, and the majority of those are still in poverty. A middle class has only just sort of come to light in the last decade or so. They're just starting to get new money, and they always used to greet each other, Chilama, have you eaten? Because, that was such an important question. And that wasn't so long ago. And, things like cars, when we first arrived in Xi'an, bikes were still, everywhere, and people were just starting to buy cars. I think everyone's probably got a car now, but it's still relatively new in terms of technology. It's still 40 years since 40 years they've had cars. That's not very long, something like that anyway. So things have progressed so rapidly in China, and they do change so quickly. Buildings go up overnight, shopping centers come down, new ones go up. But there's still that element of the poorer side of living. You've got a Rolls Royce next to an old rickety, rusty bicycle. So there's that real contrast of living in China as well. So, it was just such a big education, just learning about this population of people and where they come from and what they think about their country and what they think about the Communist Party and their president. And it was interesting. And I guess that's what I wanted to get across in the book. We always hear so much about China's political side or, the economy, but we don't often hear about the real person on the street. So that's why I went about trying to interview so many different locals, from young people to, a 95-year-old war veteran and how he thought of China today. And it was really quite fascinating to see what they think and how they fit into the world.
Hmm. So, can I ask though, how good is your Chinese actually? Because if
I
a
thought I was
95-year-old
going to
war,
say that. You asked Ava. I thought you might not ask me. I
nope,
uh,
you don't get a pass for that.
no. Um, Look, when I left Xi'an, I was quite proud of myself that I could actually hold a conversation in Mandarin. It wasn't a fancy one, but I could have a basic conversation with someone. I could talk on the phone, which was amazing because, I had lessons every week. But look, as you know, Mandarin's very, very, very hard. And I did keep
Uh,
learning it when we came back to Australia, probably the first 18 months. I still learned from my tutor in Xi'an. But it just got too difficult with life and working and everything that was going on. So, I always say I would love to go back to learning it because I did enjoy learning it. And it was quite, it's really something to have a language like that under your belt, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
hope one day I'll go back. I can still remember things. So who knows?
Uh, no worry, no worry. I mean, Chinese is not easy. You have 20,000 characters. You need at least 2,000 just to function in your daily
Mhm.
life. So,
I know. I
uh,
couldn't read anything.
the fact that you actually can actually, well, you can actually interview people in Chinese
Well, no,
is,
I must say, I had a translator. I had a girlfriend who was Chinese. She spoke English fantastically, and she translated those interviews for me because there's no way I would have been able to do that. That was just, too in depth.
面试人你没面试人翻译不容易啊。Yep, no worry, no worry. You can actually write a book about that. Like I don't know, I know you're writing a second book. You can write a third one. 你吃饱了吗？还是 how's the weather today?
Oh,
Since you
that's
can,
good.
yeah, you can.
你好，我叫 Nicole。今天
Okay.
I can't even remember what the word for rain is. It's very rainy.
下雨，
下雨.
今天下雨。
Yeah. 今天下雨, 很下雨. It'll come back to me if I start looking at it, but yeah.
Don't worry, Nicole. I don't even use Mandarin unless I need to work, and I actually don't like to study Mandarin. Like actually, the first 10 years in Singapore, I really don't like to study Mandarin.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough. It's tough.
yeah. And actually, just to let you know, I have a Google Translate beside me, so but some of
Gosh.
I still can speak Mandarin. No worries.
Yeah. Funny. Oh.
All right. Okay. So I actually want to ask now is that what okay. How important do you feel though is empathy and listening to others like in universally? Because it's definitely you at least if you pass a year living in a foreign country, at least you would have find a way to cope with the situation. And I know the way you started was way too drastic, but it what you pulled through that though. What do you feel though has been a helpful thing, a helpful tip that actually
Um, I think with things like this, it just takes time, and I think we get impatient because we get to a new place and we just want to know where everything is. We want to have our friendships set up, we want to be working and everything in its place. But, you can't. And it does take time to settle anywhere. And I always say it's like a pregnancy, it takes 9 months to get used to it. And, I found with Xi'an specifically, it was a year or more before I felt comfortable there. And it takes time to meet friends. And especially in Xi'an, there were a very small pool of expat people. And I was fortunate enough to make some really good Chinese friends. But, that does take time and you have to put yourself out there, don't you, of your comfort zone. And it's always difficult when you think, oh, I've got to, really push myself to meet new people and embrace this culture. And sometimes you just want to curl up in a ball and stay home and, forget about that world outside that you don't know. But you have to sort of force yourself to go out there and see what it's all about. And eventually it does become your new normal. Which is always such a great time, I think, when you just feel something click and it changes gear and you suddenly feel like you belong. I mean, I'll never probably belong in China, but I felt like I could walk the streets. I knew where things were. I was comfortable. I could talk to people. I didn't feel uncomfortable with people staring at me. And, I knew where things were. And it became easier. So I think you really just have to remember to be patient.
well said, well said, well said. Ah, okay. Patience. Well, that's something that
I mean,
My
simple,
generations have difficulty.
it is a
Yeah,
very simple thing, but it's probably the one thing to really, you know, be patient with everything and put yourself out there. That's the only way you're going to meet people and learn new things and learn about the country that you're in. Try and learn the language, all of that.
interesting, interesting. Okay, has actually been said several times on my show. The thing is because since every single one of the people who I interviewed are global citizens, so several of them are actually in an interracial or intercultural marriage, right? So there always is somebody who maybe if they grow up in the West or maybe they actually or are born in Asia, they actually want to create a hybrid style of parenting, which is a mix of an Asian and Western style. So one of which is to allow you to open up, express your opinion, and the other to actually still, of course, respect your elderlies, etc. So what do you feel though has been could actually result is miscommunication between cultures and generation? Is it because people are just too stubborn to stick with what they know, or a certain sense of pride? And how would you feel like somebody who has lived your life, or even maybe, well, Ava will grow up eventually, right? So what do you feel though? For people like yourself who could be a communicator to actually, in a sense, progress this kind of mindset?
Do you mean, like, for example, say if Ava was to marry someone from China or Hong Kong, and how that would work, how you would
Oh no,
manage?
my
How do
apologies.
you
What I mean is, well, let's say now, I don't know, Ava is working for a company and the company is trying to expand to China. So
right?
how would you feel though that she can contribute to this kind of progression in society? Because the world is becoming more global. One of the trends we see during COVID was, of course, remote working that allows
Mm,
people to hire somebody from
mm,
another country,
yeah,
and it kind of create that 24-hour mindset. So yeah.
yes. I think you really just have to try and understand other cultures because, I see that a lot, currently in Australia, with Chinese people. And there can be a real lack of understanding. And, you know, people that haven't even ever been to China have these assumptions, just from what they perhaps read in the media. And I think, if you're going to do business with these countries, you need to understand Asia is a whole different beast. There are so much history and so much customs and traditions that go along with Asia. And I think to understand them, to either whether you're going to live there, work there, or work with them in your own country, we have to understand one another and understand where we come from, and that while we are all different in the way we might approach things, at the end of the day, I think generally we have that sort of thread of humanity where we all just want to have a roof over our head. We all want to be loved. We all want to be in a good relationship. We want the best for our children. We all have that same bond. So I think don't forget that we're all the same deep down, but we've just got these different cultures and societal customs that shape who we are and how we think. So I think just trying to learn as much as you can about these different cultures.
I'm gonna put that in the caption. Threat of humanity. I'm gonna put that in the caption. I like that.
Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, yes, we do have different ideas about how the world should work, and we have different political systems and all of that. But at the end of the day, ask anyone, they're just going to be able to feed their family, to have a roof over their head, to make their world a better place, and to make their life, a happy one. So, I think we have to remember that, and we forget that all too often, don't we?
Indeed, indeed. Well said. Well said about that. Okay. I actually have two more questions for you. Actually, what advice though would you want to tell for maybe an Australian or somebody of Western descent who are a Caucasian actually, who would want to venture into China for the very first time? And per se, if your book is adapted for a screenplay or maybe a new material came about that could be adapted, what would you want to create though to share the experience of living abroad and raising your kid outside of your passport country?
Gosh, I'd love it to be made into a movie. How good would that be? I'll find a character. Yeah, that'd be great. Sorry, now I've forgotten your first question. I got too carried away with China Blonde being a movie. What would I say to somebody moving to China or going to China? Just be open-minded. Be open-minded, be prepared. It's very, very different to anything you know, but gee, you'll have the time of your life. What an experience. The things we saw, the places we visited were just incredible. Have a sense of humor. And that stands also, if you're moving to any country and, with your partner, I think that's key, is that you have to be able to laugh at things. And, nothing's forever too. Often we move overseas and it's such a big deal and maybe it's not right. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, you can always return home, I think just to try something, otherwise you don't gain, do you?
Well said. All right. Nicole, this is going to be your last question. I always want to end the show with a gratitude. So, what have you been most grateful for about this life as a global citizen? And just to make it fair, what do you feel could be some of its downside that you hope that actually, in a sense, you need to overcome to be a better person?
Oh, gee. Well, I know what I'm grateful for, and that is just seeing the things I've seen, the places that we've been to, the experiences I mentioned that we've had. We would never have had those if we hadn't lived overseas. You learn so much about different cultures, like I mentioned. Met so many fascinating people. Met friends forever, that will be in our lives from all over the globe, celebrated so many different traditions and customs, from not just from China and Asia, but all those different expats that you meet from France and America and Germany and Europe, wherever, you experience all of their traditions as well. So, those are some amazing moments that I'll never forget. The hard times, yeah, there's lots of hard times. There's lots of loneliness. Missing family is obviously at the top there. So it's always great to be able to travel. And I know that hasn't been the case with COVID. So, a lot of people are really missing their families at the moment, particularly people that are living overseas and haven't been able to go home. It's a tough time to be doing it. Let's just hope that this too shall pass and, things will eventually return to normal, and try and think of all the great things that you're otherwise experiencing in your life.
Well said. Well said. All right. So that's actually all the questions that I have. So before I end, I actually just need to express my gratitude to all those who are watching here today. A special shout out to Mr. Pujitan, my editor, and actually Mr. Jamie Red Goodman, a buddy of mine who actually runs the Red Ramblings podcast. And last but not least, Miss Megan Norton, who will be watching it a little bit later. She's actually in Michigan now. Yeah, last, and also if you guys are interested to support this channel, I'm not forcing anybody to do it. It's just voluntarily. But yeah, if you want to see this channel grow, please support this at buymeacoffee.com. It's located in my description box, and it will be on all my social media platforms. Plus, but definitely not least, I actually want to express my sincere gratitude for Nicole to making it here today, since it's actually 12 p.m. for her. I actually was up since 6 a.m., so I think my brain is gonna shut down sometime soon. So
Thank you so
yeah,
much for having me. I've had a great time. It's been wonderful talking to you.
likewise, likewise. Nicole, anything you want to ask? Oh, sorry. Anything you want to tell to the audience, or I don't know, maybe
No,
something to pass to Eva later on.
visit me on the social media platforms, Nicole Webb Online. I'd love to say hello to you. China Blonde is available on my website, Nicole Webb Online, and on Amazon. So if you feel like reading a bit more about the crazy fun we had in China, do that. But yeah, thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Yep, the website is already in my description box. Please feel free to check it out. And yeah, and with that, that's the end of Global Citizens episode 108,
Wow.
conversation with China Blonde, an expat explains her experience